Where is this headed? There's two approaches to answering this question. First is a practical, market-based analysis of making your best effort to lean into trends at the right time. The second approach to answering this question is a deeply personal one. Where is this all headed for you? That business you've been thinking about starting, does it lead to the life that you want? Does it fit in with your spouse's plans? Why is it that you want to start this business? Really, why do you want to start a business? Ask why again and again until you find the answer. Getting clear about what an ideal day looks like before you build the business will allow for intentionality in designing the systems that will move you towards that. Degrees of freedom. Some of us want a 4-hour work week. Some of us want to use those same systems to maximize our total possible output. There's no right or wrong answer, just a personal one that requires careful consideration. We struggle with this at Bootstrap. Do we want to become one of the biggest companies out there in our space? We think we have the vision where we can do that. But what do we give up in return? It's something that we think about a lot and struggle with to this day. Balancing things is one of the biggest challenges for an entrepreneur that has ideas and wants to make an impact. This is why having clarity on what you want for your life in the short, medium, and long term is ideal, although as our stories relate, it's not always realistic and that can lead to tension and struggle. If you have a great team, you can do a lot of things. If you've got a well-oiled system, the business can even run without you. It might allow you enough space from the day-to-day of your business to daydream about ways to 100 times your impact. This is what I've strived to do at Bootstrap, and it's led to the larger projects that we've done, including this book. We recognize that in order for us to create the change that we want to see in the world, our job is to connect with others and to offer solutions in a way that has them wanting to be a part of it. We don't get upset when people ignore us because that's our fault for not communicating in a way that connects with them. We know we won't reach everyone, and that's okay too. All this talk about impact demands a foundation in practicality, and we hope we've stayed in our lane throughout this book. Having said that, let's talk about moonshots for just a minute. Moonshots. Peter Diamandis, entrepreneur and founder of the X Prize, has coined the term moonshot thinking to describe the thought process behind solving the world's largest problems. A challenge so big, it seems as difficult as going to the moon. Most people don't think in these terms, though, which is why some solutions seem solvable by other people and not us. Dedication and focus to any project is the key to getting the results you want. Determining how much dedication and focus you want to have is a good starting point for judging where you fall on the spectrum of ambition. We are still ambitious at this point in our lives, so we're attempting our own version of thinking big, and that's part of what this book is about. It's not that writing a book is groundbreaking, but when we ask ourselves, how can we maximize the impact that we're trying to make? This book, we knew, was a step in doing that. So there will be more to come beyond this book, but we like to do more than talk, so for now, you'll just have to wait and see what comes next. We realize it might not work, and we're okay with that. We'd rather be remembered as the guys who once did that crazy thing trying to solve that problem than the guys who didn't try at all. We appreciate you taking the time to read this, and we hope that you got something out of it. Our goal was to relate our stories, and in doing so, inspiring a new idea or a thought pattern that you can carry forward to your benefit. We're wishing you all the best in getting to where you want to be. Plant Seeds Daily, Brandon Youst, and Nick Burton.
Is beautiful, practical, delicious, and connected. Epilogue by Wythe Marschall. Past to present. No human activity has transformed the earth more radically than agriculture. As growers 12,000 years ago enabled energy-dense foods to be stored and transported, this surplus fueled the rise of martial and clerical castes, served as an important medium of trade, and became the object of wars and rituals. Cities and farms arose alongside one another. And farms have sustained and destroyed life. 500 years ago, early modern European empires sought to remake a supposedly new world in the image of a titanic farm whose products serve not to feed local peoples, but distant markets, giving rise to entities as diverse as plantations of enslaved persons and commodities trading. Agriculture is not simply one sector among many. It is a dimension of life for all humans in any non-hunter-gatherer culture. So unless you, dear reader, are one of the few remaining hunter-gatherers left on this planet, you are a product of, consumer of, and political constituent of one farm-driven culture or another. Farming is a gigantic topic, and it has been, most everywhere but Antarctica, for a long time. Far to near. For all that, farms have been largely erased from the daily conscious experience of many of us, especially those of us who live in cities, quote-unquote far from farms. This is the case in terms of psychic geography, but not physical geography. In terms of jobs, at least in the United States, many people don't associate agriculture with financial, physical, or cultural reward. I've never met a college student at a non-ag school who wanted to be a farmer. Many college students seem drawn to high-tech fields, finance, or quote-unquote respectable trades such as law or medicine. Others seem to lack a vocational passion or ability to fake one, which we have to respect, but still can't imagine what it would feel like to grow food for a living. Even those students obsessed with the environmental sciences seem more drawn to studying trees, pollinators, or ocean ecosystems, all important, admittedly, than to growing food. I don't think that a network of small businesses will reverse the situation overnight. Other writers can speak to the need for redistribution of federal and state incentives regarding the forms of agriculture, commodity growers versus growers of food for humans, the need for more technical and financial support for regenerative growing practices, the need for municipalities across the country to embrace the vision of a living city, in short, for individuals to work collectively to change their own futures at the level of governance. What this book specifically offered was advice about how to get started as a farmer in your community, wherever it is, via the powerful mechanism of business. This book also offered a vision with specific examples in a variety of specific metropolitan regions of how a variety of urban farms have succeeded in the United States, forging connections with the people who eat their foods. Dream to reality. Recently, I interviewed Chef Bird of Pie Boat, a Thai restaurant in Queens, New York, which he co-owns. Although he grew up in the States, Bird goes back to Thailand often. I was trying to get him to talk about culinary herbs for a podcast episode, but as much as he did have plenty to say about holy basil, he seemed most excited to talk about farmers markets. Here, we have a few large farmers markets that happen every few days. Chefs get up early and buy the best produce and other ingredients. Lazy people like me show up for a few hours later and nab a rye roll here, a small pot of sour honey there. We all pay a premium to connect with farmers. In Thailand, according to Chef Bird, all towns have daily affordable markets that allow farmers to sell their produce fresh to consumers, including chefs. In fact, even in many urban areas, some delicious plants such as ferns and wild herbs still grow plentifully and play a role in domestic and restaurant cuisine. I bring up this alternative model because it doesn't depend on advanced technologies or some impossible-to-imagine new relationship between growers, sellers, and eaters, but upon more local growers closer to markets and a culture of eating that expects, demands, pays for, asks for, and knows a little bit about edible plants. Now, Nick and Brandon's book isn't about Thailand, it's about the US. But both the farms and markets that Chef Bird talked to me about and the thriving urban farms and food hubs that Nick and Brandon have fostered do share some qualities, which are the reasons I've drawn them together. As an anthropologist, I spend most days bothering farmers, engineers, plant scientists, students, apprentices, artists, and, yes, occasionally chefs, asking them how and why they're growing what they're growing. Complaint to action. Even so, though I am a writer who has spent the last 3 years researching urban farms who are rethinking business models in agriculture, and I admire the level of enthusiasm for smallholder urban ag that Nick and Brandon have generated, I am the unlikeliest person to write this epilogue. For one, my training is in the social studies of the so-called novel technologies such as biotech and artificial intelligence. The innovative strategies for making a living growing delicious food that Nick and Brandon discussed in this book don't require any of those especially novel technologies. That said, they do require a certain mindset that sees locally focused food systems as possible to nurture, however difficult that process proves. And this mindset itself is novel. The story that Nick and Brandon tell in this book is of how they separately came to hold this mindset, how much it has helped them accomplish professionally, and how others might make use of their experiences. So this is a book about novelty and technology, but a novel philosophy for approaching life as a grower, and what we might call social technologies such as online marketing, rethinking a meal subscription service, or working with other growers to offer restaurants the most appealing local foods. For two, I am a committed democratic socialist. I don't see capitalism as something natural, unchangeable, or self-correcting. That said, when it comes to urban farming, I agree completely with Nick and Brandon's pragmatic approach. If you want to grow and sell high-quality food near dense urban or suburban markets in the U.S., just do it. Regardless of your beliefs regarding governance and regulation, social justice, and fostering positive change in your community, almost everyone in the United States could benefit from more local food, fresher food, more nutritious food, that is, for more farmers closer to them whom they know at least a little, and therefore whom they trust at least a little more than whatever we mean when we rail against big food or big ag. In fact, I've never asked someone in the US about foodways and not had a conversation about some problem or several with this big version of growing. This collective critique is so powerful that it spawned, for one, a whole industry of shows on Netflix about expensive restaurants whose chefs source local, sustainably grown ingredients at great cost. What I admire so much about the Bootstrap farmer approach is that it doesn't stop at telegazing at fancy foods that most of us eat rarely, if ever. Nick and Brandon aren't just complaining about a flawed system of production and distribution. They're actively modeling alternatives, frankly discussing their own successes and challenges, and giving away a lot of useful concepts and their time. They do this with the aim of inspiring not only successful entrepreneurs, but successful stewards of physical environments, communities diverse and dynamic, and culinary traditions. Which is just a fancy way of saying, whoever you are, if you're interested in maybe someday starting an urban farm, or if you already grow food for a living, or if you're passionate about the contested futures of food, this book provides a practical, business-focused approach to at least one future wherein local markets supply a range of fresh foods, and we all know at least some of our farmers.